All right, Matt, how's it going?
We're doing good. Bit of a rough week for the boys. Solidified with a nice little victory at the end of the week, but we're hanging in there. We're doing good. How are you?
I can't complain when you go top of the table going into an international break. So definitely feeling good there. Uh, Before we get going, as always, you working on anything right now?
So right now, I do have a nice little glass of, it's called Hatch, from Hatch Distillery in Egg Harbor, Wisconsin, up near the up past Sturgeon Bay, about a half hour past Sturgeon Bay. So working on that. Nice bourbon, very smooth. Highly recommend it. I picked it up at Total Wine, so it's quite good.
Very
What about
nice.
you? What do you got?
I'm working on a pot or switching up a little bit, working on a party pack from Mob Craft Beer. So right now, currently working on the MC Amber, and also got the Low Funk and Vanilla Wafer Porter.
Oh, very nice.
So it
Very nice.
should be a nice roller coaster of an evening here.
It's usually how it goes.
Right. All right. Well, getting into the football here. Uh, let's see. This week, as mentioned, we got two matches. Uh, we'll talk about the big one first. 1-0 loss in Turin to Juventus on Wednesday. Uh, Federico Bernardeschi assisting Federico Chiesa on a goal in the 46th minute. Hard to call it 46 minutes, about 10 seconds into the second half. But that was the decider. Chelsea without a shot, despite controlling most of the possession. Matt, you and I have talked a lot about this match in the build up to recording here. So let's start making some of those opinions public here. What do you think of the match?
Um, Overall, I thought it was I thought it was poor on Chelsea. They they didn't do enough to create their chances. They had a couple. Kai had a couple. Ram had a halfway decent one. Actually, two of them. Um, it it seems to be a common theme after watching the game. It seems to be a common theme that teams that go against us, like teams that actually try to press us, teams that really just want to make us feel uncomfortable, they succeed a lot. We saw that with Villa. We go back to that 2 weeks ago. We saw that with Villa. They pressured the hell out of us, and it made us very uncomfortable. We weren't able to move the ball like we normally do. Juve, even without Murata and Dybala, I'm not going to throw Murata into this conversation, but with Dybala as one of their most dynamic players and goal scorers, wasn't even in, but they were still able to create chances. And the thing is, they sat back, like they went full Jose Mourinho. They parked the bus. They played the counter, and ultimately Chelsea didn't do enough in the final third as far as movement, as far as creating their own chances. The way that I kind of want to sum it up is they they came in to the game as the previous champions, expecting Juve to roll over for them, and it didn't happen.
Yeah, and you talk about that press, and it's not even just Villa. It's not even just Juve. It has been every team since Villa has pressed. Tottenham had us on the first half. Uh, Spurs match City went the whole 90 pressuring, and we just can't seem to break it. And you'd figure you go into training every day and you're working on that press because Chelsea do the same thing when they're in form. So you've got to figure that the boys know how to break break out of a press. But you and I had been talking in the lead up to this. There's something there that's not helping, and that's the lack of movement. Uh, I've been saying it for weeks with Kai Havertz, and even sometimes with Ziyech, but there's no overlapping runs. There's no movement off the ball. And so it makes it very hard to push the ball forward to create those opportunities. And what it looks like to me is a mixture of Sarri ball and Greg Berhalter ball. A lot of back passes, a lot of non-movement, a lot of just hoping that somebody's going to take it on their own and go at the defense. But without a Pulisic, without Timo Werner, without Mason Mount at the time, we just don't have that one person who's going to do it, and so it looks stagnant.
Yeah, and as I watched the game, I kind of realized something. Starting Alonso and Ziyech on the left side, that was an interesting play. In the first 10, 15 minutes, it worked. There were a lot of good overlapping runs, but at the same time, after Juve was able to figure that out, you have two players on your left side going up against Danilo, Chiesa, and Cuadrado. You're putting arguably your two worst defenders and your two slowest defenders against that kind of speed. Like, I get the idea of it, and like I said, for 10, 15 minutes, it worked. But that opens up the entire left side, and that was honestly their strong point the entire match, was down their right side. That's where they opened up everything. That's where they drew fouls. The one thing I will say, I liked how Ziyech played. He showed more aggression than I've ever seen him in his entire career. Like, I'm okay with the fact that he had 3 fouls after 20 minutes. Like, I'm okay with that, which to me, that means he understands Tuchel's message. He needs to be more aggressive. He can't just lay back and, just hope that the ball comes to him and then pull some sort of magic out of his ass. Like, he was in on challenges. He was trying to track back. Like, he was making those plays. So from that standpoint, I like that. But overall, it looked like a bunch of pissed off teenagers who just got scolded by their parents. Like, that's honestly how it looked. Everybody was out there to try and do something about it, and they just went at it with, reckless abandon. They were just going after everything. There were a lot of fouls in that first half, and probably half of them should have been arguably yellow. But like, they were just going after, which you like to see after the City match, but at the same time, they're kind of fouling because they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, and you just used a great analogy there. The teenagers doing something real reluctantly. I thought Tuchel did a great job playing parent in there. He had the triple substitution in about the 65th minute, where Ziyech, Jorginho, and Dave all came off for 3 guys who you would hope are hungry in Chalobah, and Loftus-Cheek. And then a couple minutes later, you bring on Barkley as well. I thought that was a great move. I thought that was a signal to the rest of the squad saying, shape up or ship out. Because we've seen Loftus-Cheek over the last couple of weeks has been fantastic. Chalobah has grown into his own. Cho, I'm still not sold on as a right wing back, but Tuchel seems to trust him a lot more now. And who would have thought Ross Barkley would be getting minutes over Saul? I thought he sent a statement to the squad, and if we can transition here into the Southampton game, I thought it was pretty effective shot across the bow.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was almost kind of like pay homage to Frank at that point, because you trusted the youth. Like, it was a young squad that he threw out there. If you look at everything, it was a young squad. RLC getting a start, Cho up top, like the thing with, and we'll probably get into this a little bit deeper, but the thing with Cho is he can play all over the pitch, which makes him so dynamic. He can play wherever. But the fact that you throw that much weaponry, you throw that much pace at Southampton, they're not known for being a solid or stout defensive team. Like, yeah, they put up a good match against City. Like, give them that. But once you start throwing all sorts of different pace at them and all sorts of different options, and then you bring on Ross. We half-heartedly joke about Ross, like we love Ross. He kind of is what it is. That ball that he had to Dave to set up that goal for Timo, and that was his second touch. It was just filthy. It was such a good ball. Like, the fact that we have that kind of talent on our squad that we haven't actively been using is kind of crazy. We have this youth at our disposal. RLC, he's 24, 25. Cho, I think, just turned 21. Like, and they're almost getting to the point where they are, mainstays at Chelsea, and to have that kind of ability and to have that fluctuation where you can go from one to the other pretty seamlessly, I think it helps a lot. But I do think that it is a message to Kai, to Ziyech. Mount is starting to come. Is starting to kind of come back into his old form. It's a message to them, like, pick up your shit. Like, it's been stagnant for a long time, especially with Ziyech and Kai. It's been stagnant, and something needs to change. And hopefully, this is kind of the kick that they need to either get back to the form that they were in before we bought them, or they need to go elsewhere.
Agreed. And just to run down that Southampton game, again, that was 3-1 at home. Chalobah with first half diving header into the back of the net. James Ward-Prowse converts a penalty in the 61st before being sent off with a red in the 77th, which we'll get to in a minute here. 10-man, Southampton couldn't hold the gate there. Timo Werner scores on a fantastic goal, as Matt had alluded to there. And then finally, Chills closes it out in the 89th minute, make it 3-1. I do want to talk about the Ward-Prowse red card, because it was very clearly a crucial moment in the game. He had just 15 minutes prior converted a penalty to tie it up, as Chills just looked silly against Timo Livramento. And honestly, at that point, going into the VAR review for the red card, I had the feeling that, oh God, we're going to take a draw into the international break. We're going to be sitting around fourth or fifth in the table. Just bad thoughts. I mentioned you and Parker that may be the start of Tuchel out. When you see the foul and you see the subsequent VAR review, what did you think of it? Because I've heard takes in multiple directions on that red card.
So while watching the game, I was listening to the commentary, and they did bring up a very good point. Chelsea was backed up in their own area, kind of under panic, and so Southampton was putting pressure on, and that's just a tackle that we've seen numerous amounts of times. I'm not upset at the challenge. However, he did catch him high. We've also been witness to fouls where it's gone higher up the leg, stud showing, everything like that, and it's only been a yellow. We've seen other things where it's been less than that, and it's also been a red. it I think it's a very subjective call. For Chelsea, I think it was a benefit because you lose arguably their best player for Southampton. One of their most dangerous people, especially on set pieces, corners, anything like that. He's got a hell of a right foot, and everybody knows that. Do I think it was a red? By letter of the law, it probably was. In the moment, considering how kind of free-flowing that game had been, I think it should have just stayed as a yellow.
Yeah, and my initial thought on when I saw it live before the VAR replay was red. I was surprised that he was given a yellow. I didn't think that there was the intent there, necessarily malicious intent. But if you look at where he caught him, where he caught Jorginho, that could have been a season-ending injury. He caught him in a way where, you get those weird knee bends, and you never know. As I'm sure Matt's a sufferer of many knee injuries. You never know what's gonna bend a funny way, what's gonna stretch a funny way. And so I thought it was reckless, and I thought unneeded. My first thought was red, and then going to the VAR, and it just confirmed it. It was cringy for me to watch. But
it's one of those things where you have to know the player too. James Ward-Prowse is not the kind of guy that's going to go out there and just search for reds. He's not Sergio Ramos. Like he's not Pepe. He's not going out there like looking to hurt people. He was in the moment. It was Chelsea was under fire, and he just went to make a play on the ball to try and keep the pressure on him. I understand that. It did catch him a little bit higher than I think he really wanted it to go. So looking at the person versus the actual foul, I don't think that there was intent. But then when you look at it on VAR, you look at it in slow-mo, like obviously everything looks worse in slow-mo. Like we know that. And now that officials have the ability to see that, it's a different story. I think initially he got it right with a yellow once he was able to see the slowdown to VAR, which that is something I also want to touch on. It did look like it could have been a red card offense. And they looked at it a lot. Like they took a lot of time looking at that. It was probably 2-3 minutes. They took a lot of time looking at it. So clearly they were kind of torn on whether it really should or shouldn't be. So I think that is a prime example of one of those kind of gray area. You're not really sure. You already gave the yellow. Is it really a red? I think that was a prime example of one of those calls.
And I had that next to my list here. Let's talk about VAR. There's a couple decisions lately that have gone against Chelsea. Certainly Timo Werner's goal in the first half comes to mind. But this one, I was half jokingly, half seriously thinking, okay, they're going to call this back. They're going to rescind the yellow and give it to Jorginho for simulation, just because that's been Chelsea's luck with VAR. What are you thinking in regards to video replay?
I'm going to go one step further. The VAR official for the Southampton game, Mike Dean.
Everyone's favorite referee.
He is, I don't even know what to say about him. If he can't make the game about himself, he doesn't have a good game. He has to be in control of everything. And then you give him VAR capability. Like, honestly, I think he made the game about himself, which annoys me. Then we go to Martin Atkinson. You guys know my thoughts on that. We were texting the entire time. just suspect at best. I think he's very in the moment official. He will pull one just based on the moment. He will pull one just to set the tone, make sure he's in charge. I think he's kind of an offshoot of Mike Dean. Not to the extent of Mike Dean, but he's pretty close. I
would love to see a WWE match tag team, Mike Dean and Atkinson against Jorginho and Dave.
Well, no, yeah.
Rudy and Luca.
Yeah, there you go. You need Rudy. You got to have Rudy. I thought that he didn't have. I thought that Martin Atkinson didn't have a good control of the game, and he left a lot of it up to Mike Dean to make that decision, and he's going to make the game about himself, and I think that's what he did. Yeah, but as far as VAR as a whole, they need to solidify the laws against my biggest thing. What's a handball and what's not? They have to hammer down that rule and just stick with it. Right now, it's so indecisive. It's so subjective. You have no idea if you're getting called for a handball or not, because if it deflects but it catches you and you're on the offensive side of the ball, you're on the attacking side, but if it just accidentally hits your hand, it's not a goal. But if it accidentally hits your hand as a defender, then it's not a penalty. I think there needs to be a solidified line between what is a handball, what is not a handball. They moved to this new thing where, if it catches part of the jersey, which is like part of the sleeve, then it's fine. I think that they're trying to make it easier, but they're confusing it even more.
Yeah, I think the first step to correcting VAR is just making it consistent. A VAR review should not be subject to whoever the VAR referee is. It should be just like the NFL inside the 2-minute warning. It should be just like MLB. Any scoring play, anything like that. The thing that defines that for me is you look at Werner's first goal. By the way, Werner, I saw the stat today, now has had 16 goals disallowed in the Premier League by VAR, which is astounding. But the most recent one, the 16th one, was eventually called back because of foul that had happened 18 seconds earlier, after Chelsea had already built up play, crossed the ball back and forth, I believe 3 times.
And reset play. They reset. Southampton had time to get themselves a line before Cho even brought that ball across again.
But you look for comparison to Chelsea playing Leicester in the FA Cup final, where on Tielemans' goal, the game-winning goal, Vardy had contacted the ball with his hand 10 seconds earlier, but they ruled that was too far back to review. It was not involved in the goal. But Mike Dean is now telling me that 18 seconds that have gone by and a whole new attack has gone by, that, okay, now we need to review this. It needs to be consistent from the league.
Agreed. And I mean, we even go back further. I believe Mike Dean was the head official for the Liverpool game when Reece got sent off.
No, it's Anthony Taylor.
Was that Taylor? But either way, I thought it was Mike Dean. Either way, went to the VAR screen, saw a still shot, and immediately red card. Didn't even look at anything live motion, didn't even look at a slow-mo, saw a still and was like, nope, gone. Like, how is that even... Granted, and we've talked about this, he did kind of nudge his right arm out, but at the same time, it also came off his leg before it even hit his arm. But he saw a still of it. and then he immediately red. Like there is no consistency with VAR. I think VAR is a good thing. However, they need to wrap their heads around some sort of consistency behind VAR. How far back do you need to go in order to assess something like that? Like you said, yeah, Dave clipped Kyle Walker-Peters. Whatever. Barely clipped him. Yes, it gave Chelsea possession in the final third. But we crossed the ball in twice. Then Cho got it on the opposite side of the field. Reset. He stood there with the ball, waiting for somebody to come out to him, and nobody did. And Southampton completely reset their back line. And then he throws the ball in. We score the goal. And no, it's disallowed. Like what is the appropriate amount of time? To me, it is VAR is hurting itself because there are no set rules around it. It's good in theory, but the way that it's executed, as we've seen multiple times, is absolute trash. It just is. And until they come up with some sort of consistency, it's always going to be a joke, which a lot of managers perceive that as.
Yeah, and whether it means it's tested in the lower leagues or hell tested in CONCACAF, where they currently don't use it outside of MLS, it needs to be fine-tuned. But I am glad, again, as I mentioned earlier, Timo Werner, 16 disallowed goals in his short time at Chelsea. Has one disallowed in this game, like comes back and scores what at this point may be the goal of the season.
It was absolutely beautiful. Our boy, Ross the Boss, coming in, his second touch, throws an absolute beauty out to Dave. Inch perfect pass right to his right foot. Dave hits it sweetly, crosses it right across the 6-yard box, finds Timo. Ram was lurking in the back just in case, and then Timo capitalizes. I read something today that since Tuchel has taken over, Timo has the most. He has been a part of the most either goals or build up to goals out of any Chelsea player
since like Frank Lampard.
Well,
I
yeah,
think I saw that same stat.
Since Tuchel got hired, Timo has been the most involved in all of the goal scoring opportunities out of anybody on the team. Like, the kid's got to play. He just does. Collins, I know you're celebrating right now. Like,
Thank you.
I'm in agreement, and I'm in agreement for two reasons. One, nobody else is doing jack shit. Kai, honestly, after watching, here's my Arsenal moment. After watching the Juve game, Chesney could have been in the shower smoking a cigarette like he was at Arsenal, and we still would not have scored. Very well could have been. It was that bad. Kai had plenty of chances. He's 6'3". How is he getting outbeat by midfielders that are 5'7" on a header? How? Like, the sheer physics of that are mind-boggling. I'm 6'3". There is no way that anybody 5'7" should even be close to me if I'm jumping and trying to head a ball. But Kai, I'll come out and say it. He's soft. He is soft. He is Cottonelle soft. Anytime somebody gets close to him, he tries to be like a technician. Sorry, like it might have worked for you in the Bundesliga, where nobody is probably as good as the Premier League. If you look at top to bottom, teams are probably not that great, comparatively speaking. But going up against Juve, he got bodied. Like, it wasn't even close. Like, people that are shorter than him, they're winning headers against him. He's just kind of going up there because he thinks because he's taller, he's going to win the ball. He's not. Other people are going at it aggressively. He's just going up trying to hope that his height carries him. Like, he needs to do more.
Absolutely. And yeah, I do want to get back to Timo here, but
Yes.
just my kind of closing thought on Kai is I said this in the City match. It's he looks lazy. He's not joining in the pressure. You know, he's leaving an opening for teams to beat the press. He's not making runs. He's standing around off the ball. He's not contributing. And when we have 5 defenders, unfortunately, we need whoever's up top with Big Rom or Timo to move. And for that price tag, your ass should be moving. So
Yeah.
that's my last thought on Kai, but it does tie in well to my thoughts on Timo. It's not always pretty to watch Timo play. A lot of times his first touch isn't the greatest, but unlike Kai and unlike Ziyech, he makes those runs. He's always in a dangerous spot. You know, whether he gets called offside or not, or whether that first touch is bad, he's at least getting into dangerous positions. He's at least getting into a spot where something may open up for Rom, or he can open something up for himself. I mean, just before the goal, which was brilliant, he had that great drive into the box around 3 Southampton defenders, and if not for a worldly save, he would have had another one. I'm just so impressed with Timo, and I will forever be on the Timo train. But yeah, I mean, you look at this goal, and it's everything that we have wanted out of Chelsea, going back to when Lampard came on board. You had a worldy ball in by the English Andrea Pirlo. You had an overlapping run by Dave with a beautiful first-time cross, and you had not one but 2 forwards in the box. And Timo whiffed on that. You had Big Rom right behind him. When was the last time we saw that? It was fantastic. It was by far, again, up to that point, goal of the season.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just watching it, and like you have to think about everything that went into it. That ball from Ross, oh, it was sexy to watch. That's the only way I can say it. It was sexy. Like, he hit that on a nice line drive. He hit Dave in stride, right on his right foot. A nice low cross the field ball, caught him pure. And that was Ross's second touch of the match after he just came on. To be able to do that, like, that's asking a lot out of anybody. I don't care who you are. But the fact that he hit it on a dime, Dave, love Dave. We all love Dave. He hit that ball so sweet. Nice low-driven ball across the 6-yard box. Timo there, like, Timo is a person that I think you have to root for, because he gives everything whenever he's out there. Like, you don't see him slacking. He is going as hard as he can for as long as he can. Like, to keep up, especially with his pace, like, to do that for 90 minutes is asking a lot. But he still does it. And he's, obviously, we know the slump that he had last year, and for lack of a better word, he had the yips. But now you see he's in a slightly different role. He's not being that number 9. He's somebody who can play off of that number 9, which I think that's where he thrived at Leipzig. He was able to play off of other people. He was able to make those runs. And I think that's his best attribute, is he will keep going. He will keep making those runs. It's just got to be about timing and making sure that he can finish when the opportunity presents itself. And I think he's gaining more confidence in that regard.
And I think tying this in with Kai, I think your starting front three until Pulisic comes back now has to be Timo, Big Rom, and Mason Mount. I mean, you saw the difference in energy as soon as, and I know he came on for your guy Cho, but as soon as Mount came on in the 65th, again, we had runs going into the box. We had runs off the ball. We had an outlet for Big Rom when he takes that first ball. You had creativity, which is something that we have been lacking. And Mount may be out of form, but he can still do those little things, like make those runs. The difference in gameplay with that front three compared to Kai, Ziyech, and Big Rom was night and day. Mm-hmm. It was actually fun to watch.
It was something that we haven't seen in a long time. Obviously Mount with what he did last year, just blowing up the Premier League basically. He did his thing, obviously, to start the season a little bit out of form, not what we're used to seeing, but I mean, he came on for 30 seconds and changed the game almost immediately. And that's what we come to know from Mason. Like he is capable, and he has set that bar high enough to where that is what we expect out of him, and that's what he expects out of himself. And like I said, he comes on for 30 seconds, almost creates a goal scoring opportunity right away. Like you can't ask for much more if he's coming off the bench. Like if you're going to create an opportunity like that, absolutely. Then you look at Ross coming off the bench. I'm so happy he's getting more minutes. I am extremely happy for him, and he's showing it. Like he's showing that he can still play. He's not just some laid back midfielder or whatever. Like he can still play. He still has a lot of worth. He still provides a lot of creativity that I think is lacking, especially in the later parts of the game. If we've been in this position where we're Ziyech, Havertz, and whoever, but he can provide that spark, and so can Mason. And once Pulisic is back, we have to wait and see what that does. I think if you do run something up top, you go Mason, you go Big Rom, and then you go Pulisic. You spark that creativity. Worst case scenario, you bring one of them off the bench in the late minutes when the defense is tired because you've been running them ragged. You bring somebody in with that pace, with that quickness, that creativity, give you something different, and then you go off of that.
Yeah, and was Mount involved? It all happened so quickly in the double post Chilwell screamer.
Oh, good Lord!
Did Mace have the first shot there?
I'm trying to remember.
Dave had the second.
That's tough. I don't remember offhand. It might have been Dave, Rom, and then Chills.
Yeah,
but either way, like whoever did that sequence was one of the most astounding things I've ever seen in my life. If you did not get a chance to watch it, please go look at it. By far, one of the most ridiculous things that I think myself, Collins, Parker, all of us have ever seen. 2 posts back to back, and then a half volley that just got across the touchline, which luckily got across the touchline because it was an amazing save by Martinez to even save that ball. Like, it was absolutely ridiculous. The fact they even got hands to it and kicked it out, like, that was absolutely nuts. Luckily, it crossed, which that was much needed for not only Chelsea, but also Ben Chilwell.
Yeah, I've never seen FIFA come to life so accurately
Yeah,
in one play.
that's a great way to put it.
Uh,
We
and
we
for
we we
oh,
we
go ahead.
Oh, so the three of us used to have a little game when we would play FIFA together. Every time you hit the post, you would, take a little ripper of a shot of something, usually cake, usually UV cake. There was so much. We were all messaging each other. We didn't even know what to say. We're just like, what just happened? It was one of the most FIFA-esque things you could ever see in real life. It was nuts.
Yeah, it would have resulted in a controller through the window for sure.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
But Chills, I mean, good on him. It was hell of a hit. Off the volley, perfectly struck. Again, barely made it past the goal line there, but to to come back after conceding a very, very, very silly penalty must have felt great for him, especially with his counterpart Alonso also struggling at the moment.
Yeah, which I think brings us to our biggest debate. Who is the starting left back? I mean, you have Alonso, who great left foot. I don't think anybody's arguing that. Suspect on defense. Very suspect. Not that quick.
Are you talking about Hakeem Ziyech?
Other side of the pitch.
Oh, sorry.
Unless you're talking about Juve, then same side.
Yeah.
But Alonso is he's technical. I'll give him that. I don't trust him on the defensive side. He's proven to be sustainable at a left back position. But then you have Chills. I'm a big fan of Chills, but after seeing him pull off the John Terry hat trick, I don't know. The John Terry hat trick, there are variations, but concede a penalty, they score, then score a goal after, just and he got carded and he got a yellow card. So
score with your teammate's wife.
Well, sorry, well, we'll wait for the tabloids on that one, but that's a whole different story. But yeah. I mean, he had an up and down game. He had the full plethora of emotions in that game. Made Southampton tie it, got carded, then all of a sudden he has this beautiful strike. I talked to Collins and Parker about this. I said, if you really break it down, we probably have two of the most technically sound left backs from an attacking perspective in the world. When you talk about left backs that can hit it on a volley, a half volley off their left, I think we have two of the best, no doubt. It's the defensive side of it that I'm worried about, because that has been a problem more recently than it has shown in previous outings.
See, and I was going to put Tuchel on blast on this pod had we not won, and mainly because of tactics. I don't necessarily know if it's his tactics, if it's the players not doing what he's asking, but there's some kind of disconnect here, and as the manager, he needs to make a change. Left back was one of them. Alonso was struggling, yet he continually turned to him. Alonso is not a natural wing back. He doesn't naturally fit this system. He's not a great attacker. He can put in a good ball, but he's not a great attacker. Doesn't make those overlapping runs. Chills is a better defender than Alonso. Again, can put in a great ball, but has mental lapses, as we saw this week. And then on the other side of the pitch, you have Dave, who again, not a natural back, isn't. I don't see the comfortability in him getting up the pitch as the main attacking threat off the wing. Reece James is really the only one who fits that, but he's out for 6 to 7 weeks with an ankle injury. So why are we still running at 5-3-2? Why do we need a left wing back? I mean, ultimately, you're going to play Dave. Dave has to play. He's the captain. So you're going to stick him on the right, especially with no Reece James. But how about instead of Alonso, instead of Chills, throw Cho out there?
Yeah, I mean it's something that I've talked about before. If Reece is out, if Dave is out, like whatever the case is, you can throw Cho back there. I think Tuchel has shown that he trusts Cho to be able to handle that. Probably not for a full 90, but he's somebody that could, if you rely on Dave for 60 minutes, you can throw Cho in at the end and you're good to go. I completely agree in the fact that Dave is definitely not a right wing back. However, we've seen him make all those runs years prior, getting up the pitch, just flying down the wing. We've seen him do that before, so it's not uncommon. I think the fact that he's more in the attacking position is a little bit foreign to him. We've obviously followed them a long time. He can make those darting runs down the pitch. When we had Murata, he would find him all the time when Murata was onside. He would find him easily because he made those runs. But I think now pushing Dave a little bit more forward, he's not as comfortable in that position as it would be as just like a natural right back that would occasionally make like a darting run. So I think it's going to take a little bit of time. I think he's doing well, but I think Reece is your more overall, right wing back. He's physical enough. He can play defensively. He can run up the field. He throws in a great ball. Cho, I mean, you run him as we saw, as a left mid, like you run him as a right wing back, like he can go wherever. So you have that option, but he's definitely more attack minded. I think Reece is kind of your better overall in that right wing back position.
The other thing I wanted to kind of put Tuchel on blast for here, really awful transition, but is the use of Big Rom. And I guess it's not so much putting him on blast here, but more posing the question, is Big Rom more of a club signing or is this a Tuchel guy?
What are your thoughts on it?
So initially I thought, yeah, Tuchel's all on board, which he very may well be, but he doesn't seem to fit the system. It seems like Harry Kane would have been a great option. Certainly Erling Haaland would have been a great fit, but somebody who makes the runs, as opposed to somebody who holds up play. So I guess what I'm seeing here, because what we're seeing this year doesn't match what we saw last year when we had Werner as the striker and Giroud and Tammy, where there was so much creativity, there was so much movement. We didn't convert a lot of those chances, but we had the chances. This year, we don't have the chances, but we're converting more of them. And looking back at what Tuchel has had, PSG's had guys who make runs. He had Mbappe, he had Neymar. You go back to his days at Dortmund and at Mainz, he's never really had the hold up guy. So my thought is Tuchel playing this because Marino and Roman are telling him he has to?
If you look at it from that perspective, I get it. The way that I look at it is, Rom isn't getting the service that he needs. Like, he's really not. And we'll go back to Kai and Ziyech and whoever. Like, he's not getting the service. And to be the striker that he was at Inter, he had that plenty. He had other attacking options that would be dangerous going forward. Nobody's scared of Kai going forward. Nobody's scared of Ziyech going forward. Like, they're just not. Inter, you had that plenty. But, like, it's just weird to me because if you look at it in, like, an overarching kind of idea, it's a faster, younger Olivier Giroud. It really is. You have a striker who you're using as a link-up player to hold up the ball and then set up your wingers. The only problem is our wingers are not moving forward unless they're Timo.
So what you're saying is it's not necessarily the player doesn't fit the system. It's more of the system doesn't fit the player.
Yeah, I think so. It's just more of like, Rom's going to do Rom things, right? Like, he's a big guy. He's going to roll defenders off the shoulder. Like, that's just what he does. He's got a great left foot. He's going to score when he has the service. I don't think he has the service right now.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if you saw what Antonio Conte said about Big Rom this week about how they don't know how to use him. But they're saying, he's got the pace. He can certainly run at defenders. He can run into space. You can take him on the counter. You can certainly use him as Chelsea has been. But he has all these other facets to the game. The reason why I held off on necessarily putting Tuchel or the club on blast is that I started seeing a little bit more of it from Big Rom against Southampton. So whether that's the influence of Timo Werner being on the pitch, or whether that's Tuchel, making an executive decision, I did see Rom running at the defense a little bit more. I saw them playing him into space, and it seemed like he went in eyes wide, ready to go. So hopefully it's turning a corner, but just something that I noticed that he doesn't necessarily fit Tuchel's system, and it'll be interesting to see how that changes or how it doesn't change coming out of the international break.
Well, I mean, and the big thing is that, if you look at the teams that Tuchel has had, he had Dortmund, he had PSG, so he had Mbappe, he had Neymar, he had Aubameyang for a little bit. Like, he had legitimate strikers, but those are also strikers that make runs. Rom is not necessarily a make a run type person. He's somebody who's going to roll people off the shoulders. So I think it's a different dynamic that Tuchel is trying to kind of figure out, like, what to do with him and figure out a way to get him the service that he needs to make him successful. Who was the manager at Inter? Was that Conte?
Yep.
He found a way to make it work. I mean, hell, he found a way with my boy Michi. Like, he was able to find a way to even make that work. Like, I think that with Rom, it just comes down to getting him service, give him a chance to be more than just the big boy in the box that can hold up play. Like, give him a chance to actually attack, give him those situations where he can kind of go one-on-one and just kind of go more direct than what he's been doing instead of just this link-up play.
Yeah, and with that creativity, I got one last question here for you that we'll discuss. Christian Pulisic has now gone international break to international break without featuring, after we were told that it was a slight ankle injury. The U.S. men's national team is reporting he should be back within about 10 days. It's now been several weeks, and still, I believe Tuchel said this week, it's still too painful for him to train with the team, so he's still training on his own. Are you concerned about Christian?
So I will bring this up. I talked to my father about this, and I really think that he has a legitimate point. Christian's hurt all the time. It is, and this might feed into a segment for next week. Is Christian potentially a flop as a U.S. men's national team player? Like, he's always hurt. He's always hurt, whether it's a hamstring or an ankle or something. When was the last time you played a full season? That's something I would really like to know. And it's just weird to me that, you know, he goes on these runs where he's good for, you know, 2 months, and then all of a sudden, his hamstring. It's his ankle. Granted, he is playing so he's in an interesting spot because he is essentially the face of U.S. soccer. Like, he is. He's really the face of it from an international perspective and from U.S. Like, if you ask somebody, well, who do you know from the U.S. men's national team? Name one person. Christian Pulisic. Like, that's going to be almost automatic. I think he has a ton of pressure on him, and it for lack of a better analogy, it almost seems like that weight is kind of causing all these injuries because he's supposed to be playing for this big club at Chelsea. You know, we paid him a shitload of money to be the right wing and to do what he does. He's always injured. And then he goes on these spurts where he does great with Chelsea, and then he goes to the U.S. men's national team, and then it's completely different. And then all of a sudden he's injured again for another month or two. It's almost like the weight of all of that is like physically crippling him.
Yeah, and I think honestly what's hurting his club career is his international career. It's widely known that CONCACAF is garbage. Yeah,
that's putting it nicely.
It's hashtag CONCACAF.
Yes.
The teams themselves are getting better. You know, Jamaica has come up now. Costa Rica has gotten better. Panama is always there. Canada is getting better. But you look at where they play, and it's just asking for an injury. The pitches, God, they look like baseball fields. Like, do you remember when the Raiders used to play at the same field that the Oakland A's played in?
Oh, yeah.
And you had the baseball field on one side. That's exactly what CONCACAF is. You got half a dirt pitch. The other half is real shoddy grass. And then you have referees that don't know how to referee, or in some cases, as we've seen recently, are being paid by national federations. You have so much corruption in the region. And ultimately, it's tough to play in. How many times do you see a crunching tackle go as a no call? Or, you know, somebody is out injured for 8 to 9 weeks after being basically scissor kicked in CONCACAF, and then no yellow card. That's foul, I guess. I think it'll never happen, but for the sake of the club, for the sake of his club career, and for the sake of the longevity of his career, he needs to retire U.S. men's national team. Don't bother with the travel. Don't bother with the awful pitches. Don't deal with the awful referees and awful other players. Stay in England, stay in Europe if that's where he ultimately goes, and just focus on the football there, because he could be so much more than what he is. But I swear it's every time he comes back from international duty, he comes back injured.
I will ask this question in retaliation to that. Is that on Christian, or is that on the U.S. men's national team and the federation to start realizing that?
Oh, Greg Berhalter doesn't do him any favors. Greg Berhalter is constantly fighting for his job. He's going to consistently field his best lineup. The only reason he's not on this international break is because they're all injured. Well, except for Weston McKennie, who's just an idiot. But they are never going to treat Pulisic like somebody who needs to be held like in bubble wrap. Anytime he's available, anytime he's fit, he's going to go 90. He's going to go play on those awful pitches. And being the only creative player on that team, he's going to be chopped down 10 times a game. The U.S. doesn't care. They deal with him 1 week, or not deal with him. They have him for 1 week a year, or not 1 week, 1 week a month. Really, any injury is going to be Chelsea's problem. It's not their problem. So I think it's on the U.S. to change their attitude, or conversely, it's on Christian to make a decision what he wants to do, whether he wants to win a World Cup with the U.S., which is great, or continue to win Champions Leagues with Chelsea, which is also great.
And I think both of our preferences, as much as we love the U.S. men's national team, we're big fans. I have a U.S. men's national team Pulisic jersey. Like, we're fully committed. The U.S. is not winning a World Cup for at least another 20 years. With the way things are going right now, it's just not possible.
And again, we see them for 1 or 2 matches a month for 3 months, 4 months out of the year during international breaks. But other than that, it's Chelsea week in and week out.
Yep.
So at this point, and I know I'm not Christian, it's not up to me, but I'm making a heck of a lot of money at Chelsea, not making a heck of a lot of money with the U.S. national team. Club has got to be my priority, club over country.
Yep, and granted, kind of that's a tough ask, because if you look at it from the standpoint of like the Olympics, if you're asked to play for your country and represent your country in something like the Olympics, or even a World Cup qualifier, like, yeah, you obviously want to, like that, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. Like, I'm sure everybody would love for that. But at the same time, when the source of your injuries usually come from playing in those games, and then that impacts what you do for your club, and then you're just, $100 million realistically just kind of sitting there trying to rehab. You're basically just rehabbing for $100 million, right? What's the point? Granted, you're getting paid for it, like, that's fine, but at the same time, like, you want to show what you can do, and right now it's almost kind of been labeled like, well, you're kind of a liability more than you are an asset, which, knowing Chelsea and the way that they operate, Collins, you and I know better than anybody else. We know what that means. That means, hey,
Lone army.
you're going on loan or you're going to be transferred. So we don't want to see that at all. There's obviously a lot of skill, a lot of potential. We've seen it. It's just a matter of keeping him healthy, and I think that focusing solely on Chelsea is going to be the biggest. It's going to be the biggest benefit to his career long term. The U.S. will be fine, right? Like, Christian isn't even their most prolific goal scorer. Like if we look at it, he's really not even. He doesn't really score like a lot of the goals. Yeah, he'll take PKs every now and again, but I mean, you have a bunch of other people. Like, the U.S. men's national team is growing, so you have people playing in Europe, so it's growing. But you don't need one person to every single international break to try and carry the entire team.
Right. Spread the wealth a little bit, Greg.
Yes. Collins, where are we at for time? Because I want to bring up one other thing if we have a little bit.
I think we're just over an hour. We can. All
right.
Explore. What's up?
We'll hit it real quick. RLC.
Oh yeah, that was in my notes. I forgot him.
No, you're good. Where are we at? Where are we at with RLC?
Starter.
Over who?
Rotate.
Well, you can't say starter and then rotate.
No. So Conte is your number one, obviously. Jorginho is your number two. Yeah. Okay. For those who don't see at home, Matt just gave me frowny face. So Jorginho number two, Kova number three. Rotate those three. When Conte's injured, when Conte needs a break, throw in Jorginho. When you have a team pressing you, you throw in Kova. And when you need Andrea Pirlo, you throw in Ross the Boss.
So where does RLC fit into that?
Oh, sorry. He's your other, starting alongside this rotating group.
Oh, okay. Well, obviously Conte when he's healthy, obviously, like, he has to be there. He holds down the midfield. He'll do what he needs to. Kova's your number two. Granted, before the pod, I just watched the Juve match. Jorginho didn't do a damn thing. What I did see of him was the same thing that I've known him to do. Try and make like a lunging tackle, and then all of a sudden it didn't work, and then he just kind of relied on the defense to pick up the scraps. And he just kind of looked back and kind of walked. That's kind of what I know him to do, which he does a lot. Conte, I would say Conte, Kova. Kova was arguably the most creative player we had in the Juve match. Like, he was arguably, like, honestly, the most creative player that we had, at least making runs. But I would say I'll put RLC above Saul, by all means. Like Saul, he hasn't proved himself yet. RLC has. I would say, based on if I'm Tuchel, and I know, and I like to think I know how he operates, but I'm grasping at straws here. RLC should probably be your number 4 midfielder.
It's rotated through once every other match, every 3 matches, something like that.
Yep, I think he is above Saul, definitely above Ross, but I think he is your number 4. I think that's where he's at. With the way he's been playing lately, he could be a number 3. We all know, at least followers of of the pod, they all know who I would replace RLC with, but for that number 3 spot. But I
No.
honestly, I think that he does a much better job. His passing is great. He's a bigger body, a bigger presence. And yeah, that's just kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, I think he's definitely worked his way up there. Again, for me, it's you can't take him out of the lineup. Rotate everybody else at this point. But long term, I tend to agree with that. I'd say he's probably our third best midfielder at the moment. All right. Well, on that wonderful note, I think we've about hit time for today. So Chelsea is off international break. Come up this week. We will still record. We will flood your ears with our nonsense. So yeah, we'll be back next Sunday. Make sure to check us out on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at FlagDownPod. You can also find us wherever you listen to podcasts: Spotify, Apple, Google, etc. Again, just search "Flag" or the Flag Stays Down podcast. Thanks again for listening, and Matt, we'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good. Cheers, brother.
Cheers.